Hello. I've been getting asked a pretty common question. Sometimes it's a question and sometimes it's just something that comes up in conversation. But for those of you who are, on the awakened path or the red pill path, as we say, there's a lot of frustration right now if we have friends or family or partners who are not who are not far along on that path as we are. And it's creating a lot of divide, I find, between families and friends, and within the home, especially, it's particularly challenging, right, to see the world in a certain perspective and not be supported in expressing those beliefs in your own home can be a real challenge. And there's a lot of people who are asking, how do we awaken our friends and our family? How do we allow them to see what's really going on in the world so that we get that mass of people who are seeing what we're all seeing? And the struggle is that sometimes we share too much too fast. And when we do that, it creates a bit of a wall, it creates a resistance. And our friends and our families often will respond by saying, "You're crazy," or they'll just shut you down, they'll walk away. And it hurts because you want to be heard and you want that compassion and understanding from those closest to you. And then there's also the real challenge of being called crazy, especially the parents that are listening to this, right? Is you have to walk a careful line and making sure that you are supporting your children and that the people around you also see you supporting your children. So there's a technique that I use. I don't push. That's the biggest thing, is I don't push a lot of information down people's throats, so to speak. But I also am very cautious about what I share with different individuals and different people in my lives, depending on what their comfort level is. So, for example, if you know about all of the different rings that are out there, if you know about what might be happening behind the veil, maybe you're into some of the galactic stuff that's happening, there's different levels of tolerance for different topics. So you really have to know your audience well. And so if someone is pretty, I would say, mainstream and not open to all of this information, then it's better to just stay with the conversations that are happening in the mainstream media. So you can add a little seed. I call it planting seeds. You add a little seed about some of the content that might be happening in the media. So you might want to stick to information around test results and test numbers and things like that. So if that comes up in conversation, I usually reference, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did see that in the news, but have you also heard or seen the information around some of the concerns around positive test results, false positive test results, sorry, meaning that there's a lot of positives that are actually false, which is a known understanding in the science community." To just plant that seed that maybe there's more information there that we need to look at to get a broader perspective. The other thing that I do is I'll just start by planting those little seeds in conversations, and I also wait for people to bring me information. So everyone is sharing information back and forth right now. And so if somebody sends you an information about perhaps a local police operation that just found some trafficking issues, lots of times I find our ego, for those of us who are further along the awakened path, kind of gets in the way of supporting and encouraging the awakening of others. So when we receive those articles, we're like, "Oh yeah, I saw that months ago," or "I saw that weeks ago." And what that does is it deflates the other person, and it also it creates this feeling in them that they're not going to send more information. They're not going to discuss it more because they feel lesser than us, right? Do you see how that could happen in a conversation? So when I receive those, even if I have read it before, my response, I try, it not always happens, right? Because we're stressed and we're busy. But when I'm consciously supporting someone, my response is something along the lines of, "Yes, that's a great article. And have you heard about this?" So take what they're sending you, take what they're seeing, take what they're already questioning, and add the next seed to it, add the next step to it, right? Of like, "Yes, I did see that. And have you also heard about this other level?" Right? So if someone is sending you information about, say, trafficking that they've recently heard about on the news. Yes, I have heard about that. And have you also heard about these ones that are happening in Australia or in another town or in another city? You know, and what you're doing is you're validating for those individuals what it is that they are starting to see, what they are starting to find, and then you're just slowly encouraging them to go one step further, one step further. And that is a great approach, I find, to encouraging the awakening on any topic, because it allows the individual to go at a pace that is comfortable for them, right? Because we've all had moments where, especially now, we've probably seen things that have been a little bit traumatic and a little hard to take. And those moments can lead to a lot of sleepless nights. And some of us are more prepared to handle that emotion than others. And so if we can't handle it, that's when we're going to push it away and say, that's crazy, it's not true, it's a conspiracy theory, etc. So we want those little tiny nudges. So here's my suggestion, challenge for the next week or two is to respond with enthusiasm when people send you something, and just try that yes and have you heard. The yes and is a really, really great response, I find. And see how many people you can start to allow that blossom of awakening to start to unfurl, to allow that flower to open so that they can start to explore and they feel encouraged and supported to explore. Because as we awaken, we need other people to be awakened at the same level and even above us, so that we feel that support when we hit those rough days. And you've been through them, right? You've been through them. We need someone to be able to just be real with us, and for us to be able to be real with them, to say, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I just read. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to interpret it. I don't know if it's true or not, but this is the emotional response I'm having to it. And I need someone to understand that emotional response without just pushing me away and giving me a label that I'm crazy or I'm a conspiracy theory or I'm uncaring or whatever label it is that they assign. The label doesn't matter, but the emotional support does. Okay? So have a beautiful week, and remember, yes, and